So now I'm going to conclude this K-means clustering session today. So I will talk about coding part. So we have to understand how to code this kind of programming. So we will talk about the details about this coding. See, whenever we started this machine learning class, I have already informed that our data set is already there in a CSV file. We have to just read that file. But here, if you observe this code carefully, there is no such code where I am reading file from CSV, right? See the code. So is there any line where I am reading any CSV file in this code? Still, my iris dataset is already loaded. So now I will talk about another feature. We have to discuss about this feature. This feature is very much evident. See this one. So here what I did, I have read something from a library which is sklearn.dataset, from where I have imported the dataset load iris. So now I will start from this discussion, that is sklearn datasets. Meant that you have to load dataset either from UCI machine learning or Kaggle. But in Python, you have a provision that you can load your dataset directly from the library which is known as scikit-learn. Scikit-learn. So this is the data repository from where you can find out your dataset. Means this scikit-learn scikit-learn library contains built-in dataset in its dataset module that are often used in specific machine learning programming, and all those datasets are either used for classification and it can be also used for regression. So this thing will be mentioned, but I have proven that we can also bring data modules from this scikit-learn and we can use it for clustering also. So this is the first point you have to remember. Now what kind of data set we have? We have Irish data set, we have Boston house price data set. Also, we have a specific data set which is known as digit data set. Now whatever coding I have shared with you, you will find there will be, I have performed loading of Irish data set, and also you will find another code where I have used this kind of data set. So this is known as digit data set. Now I want to tell you one point is that means scikit-learn is a holder of enormous amount of data set, and it will also have the specific handwritten digit data set from 0 to 9. So in the context of clustering, one would like to group the images such that the handwritten digits on the image, that is, they are same or not. So here I am giving you one assignment, that is you have to load Irish dataset from scikit-learn. Also you can do one thing, you can load image dataset. It is not a digit dataset, means it is not a number dataset, it's an image dataset where the repository is containing the images of a numbers. Say it will have several images together for the number 1. Then it will have a collection of images together for number 2. So similarly, you can load image dataset also. So this way you have to understand. So scikit-learn, from scikit-learn we can load the dataset directly for our working purpose. So instead of reading CSV, you can opt for this line. But today our topic of discussion is something else. What is that? So apart from loading data from CSV or from loading it from the scikit-learn, we have to understand some specific feature. means how this K-means clustering is working, and there are some specific term associated with it. So we have to learn about this. See, we are importing something for K-means, but if you look at this line carefully, then you will find some specific terms. See, K-means is equal to K-means, and see here the spelling of the K-means is different from the spelling of the K-means here. So basically, if you pay attention to this portion, you will find that this K-means is a function. And what are these attributes, or what are the arguments we are using over here? Now I am going to discuss one by one. Now look at the first argument, that is n clusters, which is equal to 3. So what is this? So try to understand this point. The default value of this n cluster in Python is 8. Means if you are not mentioning any number over here explicitly or externally, if you mention only this parameter, it will take the default value as 8. Now what is this n cluster? This n cluster denotes the number of cluster you are going to form, as well as it will also denote the number of centroid to be generated. Because the previous day I have explained that the first step of the K-means algorithm is, first we have to decide what is the value of K, and then also we have to decide what is the value of the centroid. Since the number of cluster is equal to the number of centroid, if you see the output, you will be able to find we have 3 black centroids and we have got 3 clusters. So here you have to remember one point: the value of the n cluster, which actually determines the number of clusters and the number of centroid to be generated. And explicitly I have mentioned that the value of this n cluster is 3, because I'm going to form 3 clusters, because I know that in Irish dataset the number of species is equal to 3. So here the point is, I'm giving you one tip, you can say that in K-means clustering algorithm we don't know how many clusters are there, but you know that from UCI machine learning repository, whenever we are extracting the data, in that portion you will find a clear description that how many different types of data sets, means how many different types of varieties are there or classes are there in the data set. So by visualizing that value, you can understand what should be the value of the n cluster. So this is the first parameter. Now see, we have the second parameter, init is equal to K-means plus plus. See, I'm just going to share one word, that is, what is this init? So init means some method which is invoked for initialization purpose. So in any object-oriented programming, you will find this kind of init method. That is, whenever we use Java programming language, it is also an object-oriented programming language where you find init method in case of designing an applet. So inside this init method, we are going to set the background color of an applet. So this init kind of thing is very much common in any object-oriented programming. But here we have to focus about this term, K-means plus plus. So basically this init is you can say that init equal to K-means plus plus is a callable, or you can say that it's an array-like or shape. So it denotes some kind of shape, and default value of this shape is K-means plus plus. And this is a method which is used for initialization purpose. And what this K-means algorithm, K-means plus plus indicates, it selects initial cluster centers for K-means clustering in a smarter way to speed up convergence. So this is a very important thing you have to understand. In the previous day, I have discussed that our initial responsibility of the K-means clustering algorithm is to fix up or to pick up the initial centroid values. Generally, we do it in a random manner. So we pick up some random points and consider it as an initial centroid.
But from the next step onwards, when the program iterates further, the position of the centroid will be changed. And what is the stopping criteria of this algorithm? So this centroid position will keep on changing depending on a specific formula, and this algorithm will stop when the position of the centroid will remain fixed. Means if I find this yellow centroid, say at iteration number 4, and if I am reaching iteration number 5, then also the centroid position remains same for this algorithm, then we can say that our algorithm converges. So converging criteria of the algorithm is very much evident. Means if my algorithm is not converging, means my centroid position will keep on changing, and on the basis of centroid position, the data points which are forming the cluster, the position of the data points will also changing. So here the important point is this k-means plus plus is basically used to select the initial cluster centers for the k-means, as it is selected randomly. And this clustering, and this, if you use this kind of argument, then it can create a smarter way to select this one. Means using this init method, basically some random centroid selection is automatically done. So this argument is one of the important argument you have to keep in mind. But sometimes there are specific terms used with this k-means plus plus, that is also known as random. There is another point sometimes used which is known as random, which is choose n number of observations or rows, you can say. So if I ask you this question, that is selecting n number of clusters means cluster centroid means what? So you have to be very specific while defining it. In the previous day, I have explained that we have our data set like this. So we have features in the column and we have label in another column, and values of each and every instances will be kept in a row. So picking up centroid means randomly we are basically picking up rows. So this thing you have to keep in mind. Actually we are selecting random number of rows as a data point, as a initial centroid from the data set. So if an array is passed, it would be a shape of n cluster and n feature. Now we have got this idea, features and clusters, right? So this is how a particular row is used to represent a particular centroid of this algorithm, and this k-means plus plus is responsible for selecting the random centroids. And now I want to tell you one point. Whenever I'm talking about init function, somewhere you find me writing init function like n underscore init, then some just like int, and then we can write default 10. This kind of syntax is also available. So default is equal to 10. So basically the number of times the k-means algorithm will be run, it is also controlled by this factor. Means whenever you find me fixing up any default value as 10 after writing this query, it means I'm fixing up that how many number of times my k-means algorithm will be running with the different centroid seeds. Means whenever the centroid value is changing, means the centroid seed value, means the position of, means randomly selected centroid positions are also changing. So this is helpful in fixing up how many times my algorithm is going to iterate. Now you can ask me one question. Okay, we have got the idea that we can fix up that my algorithm will run 10 times or 11 times or 12 times. But how could we understand that my algorithm is converging? See, there is no specific rule. Say you are fixing up the default value as 10. Then after 10 iteration, you have to check that your algorithm is converging or not. In general, whichever default value is fixed up for Python, say it's 10, and what happens within that iteration, in general, your algorithm will converge. If not, you have to increase this value, right? So the final result will be the best output of n underscore init and consecutive runs in terms of inertia. Now we have to understand another term. Okay, so up to this discussion, we have got the idea about we can fix up how many clusters we will have, how many centroid points we should have, what should be the default points that will be selected as centroid. We understood that, but there are some associated terms. Means n underscore init means whenever I'm fixing up it by 10, means my algorithm will iterate 10 times. So within 10 times we are expecting that our algorithm will converge. Means 10 times the different new cluster centroids will be selected. But there is one term associated with it. Means whenever I am defining that n underscore init is equal to 10, means after iterating 10 times, I will get the best output of n underscore init consecutive runs in terms of inertia. So it is not like normal iteration. In terms of inertia, I will get that. We will get the best centroid output. Now what is this inertia term is all about, which is always associated with this K-means algorithm? So first we have to understand this inertia term, because internally this inertia term is totally dependent on this n underscore init factor. So what is this inertia? So scientifically there are many different meaning of inertia, but what is this inertia is all about? See, say let's an example. Say in one word, if you ask me this question, that is, what do you mean by inertia for K-means clustering? So inertia is basically a measure. Measure of what? So inertia measures how well a dataset was clustered by K-means algorithm. Means whenever we have our dataset, our only aim is to find out appropriate number of different groups that will divide my dataset into some different segments. So this inertia measures how well this grouping we have achieved using this K-means clustering algorithm. And how it is achieved? How this calculation is performed internally? It is calculated by measuring the distance between each data point and the centroid. I have explained this one. So calculating inertia means basically I am calculating a distance. Distance between what? Distance between the selected centroid and each data point exists in the data set. So distance between these two first, then distance between these two, and then distance between these two, because we have to find out the minimum distance of this particular data point with respect to this centroid. Right? So inertia means finding the distance between the data points and its centroid, and then we have to squaring this distance and summing these squares across one cluster. So only measuring distance is not enough. So after measuring the distance of the point and the centroid, we will square this up, square this distance, and then we will sum up this squares of the distance across all the clusters. So this is the formula. I will explain it later on. So this is the meaning of inertia, and that's why I'm talking about. So inertia is a measure of how well a dataset was clustered by K-means clustering. Now you can ask me another question. Okay, we have got this idea, but what should be the value of this inertia? Means low value is expected, high value is expected. What kind of value? How good means what? So basically, traditionally, if I'm talking about a very good model, means which will give us a very good numbers of separation in for my data set using K-means clustering. So any good model will be expected to have very low inertia. it is expected, and very low number of clusters, that is the value of k. So always you have to keep in mind the number of clusters selected by us should be low, and the value of the inertia will be low, because distance, we are expecting the lowest distance between the point and the centroid. So that will be our target. So the whichever distance is less, we will assign the point nearest to that centroid. And why low k value is expected? Because k value I can fix up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So if the number of k is set, say 10, so we have 10 different kinds of clusters. So whatever number of data points we have, they will be scattered unnecessarily. So finding a proper number of group, and if the value is lower, then it is a good measurement. However, this is the difficulty. Means what should be the value of the k and what should be the value of this inertia? It is a trade-off kind of thing. So we have to adjust. So if we increase k, the inertia will decrease. So what will happen if we focus on k, then our inertia will be hampered. If we focus on inertia, our k value will be hampered. So this is one of the most difficult part in K-means clustering algorithm, adjusting these two things. So whatever may be the situation, somehow we have to manage something in which we have got some kind of trade-off. So please make a note, the concept of inertia means a concept of squaring up the distance from data point and the centroid and selecting the value of k hampers each other. If you select a very good value of k, then the inertia value will be hampered, and the reverse is also true. So always the main hurdle of the K-means clustering algorithm is adjusting these two. Right? And if you ask me, okay, why it is known as trade-off, I can give you just an idea. If I am going to plot this situation in terms of graph, say we have number of clusters k in x-axis, and if we have inertia in y-axis, so we will get some kind of, means if you going to find optimal number of clusters, then we will get somewhat this kind of graph. So say this is the cluster value, say 1. So this is the cluster value 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, something like this, 7. And then say this is the inertia value, say 100, 200, 300, 400, 500 and 600. So if these are the inertia value, each time you will get this kind of situation while selecting the cluster. So whenever you keep on selecting the cluster value, so this is how your graph will look like. So that's why it is very much difficult to adjust between this K-means clustering the value of k and the inertia, right? But see, there is again another term which is known as max tire, and it is somewhat like 100. So what is this max tire? The first point you have to remember that the value of the max tire is 300 in default value. Here explicitly I have made this value as 100. So you can try this one. But what is this max ITR? What this max ITR is the maximum number of iteration the K-means algorithm for a single run. Now try to understand the difference between these two. This is the most important thing you have to understand. So whenever I am talking about iteration, so whenever I am talking about one iteration, it does not mean that it is a one run. So within a one run, we will have several number of iterations. So one times execution of K-means clustering will have several combination of internal iterations. So this maximum number of iterations of the K-means clustering algorithm for single run. So if my algorithm iterates 100 times or say 10 times. My algorithm iterates 10 times. In each, and it is not an iteration, it is a run. Means 10 different runs my algorithm is providing. In each and every run, internally we have 100 iterations. Means 100 times the centroids are adjusted on the basis of the position of the data points. So this thing you have to keep in mind. So always we have to adjust these two factors. So one is the run of the programming, and in each run how many iterations should be there, we have to fix it up. So this is the basic idea that you have to keep in mind for K-means clustering algorithm, right? So this is all about this K-means clustering algorithm, and now you will find something, this one, fit predict, and then we have some more steps. So what are these steps are all about? I will tell you the technical parts. So now, I have already explained what are the steps that we have to follow in order to write the K-means clustering algorithm. Now programmatically, what are the steps involved in K-means clustering algorithm? So first is the K-means function that I was talking about. So this algorithm will follow some specific steps. What is that? So since I'm using this K-means clustering algorithm using scikit-learn, so the first thing is we have to import the K-means method. So this is the first step. Import the K-means method. So from where should I import it? We have to import this one from sklearn.cluster. So this is the first step. And this sklearn.cluster is a library to build a model with n_cluster. So this is the very first step you have to perform. See, I have done the same thing, that importing part of the K-means. So this thing we have to import. So this is the first step. Now what is the next step? The next step is very much interesting step. So in the next step, we have to perform model fit. So we have to fit the model to the data sample using .fit function. So now what do you mean by the fitting up the model? See, fitting up the model means whatever thing I have explained. So we have to adjust the trade-off between inertia and K value. We have to adjust the number of iterations. We have to adjust the number of runs. We have to adjust how our initial centroid will be selected by setting it default value K-means ++. So everything comes under the fitting part. So adjustment of this part. And what is the third step? The third step is we have to perform prediction. That is, we have to predict the cluster that each data sample belongs to. So we have to find out such a cluster in which we can accommodate our data samples from our data set. So this thing we have to perform, and this is performed by a function which is known as .predict function. And remember one point, it is the most important point. After using function, we have to store this one. So how to store this one? For storing purpose, we have to use labels. So predicting the cluster that each data samples belongs to, we have to use .predict function, and later for storing purpose, we have to use this term labels. So these are the very basic 3 steps we have to perform while designing the K-means clustering algorithm. And if you see the code, you will find this kind of abbreviation throughout this program. And why this part is used, I'm not going to define this one because this is just for an display purpose. So I've already explained this thing. So this thing you have to keep in mind, what is this label is all about. So this label is for storing those values, whatever we are predicting. So this thing is new thing. And also here, whatever value we are using over here, the color you can alter and the name of the species you can also alter, and this kind of plotting you will expect from here, right? Where is the loop where our program is iterating? So these are the two terms which are responsible for controlling the program code execution. So whatever output I have got, now we know what are the default values of this programming. It is very much clear to us. If I alter those values randomly without knowing anything, what kind of effect we can expect in this output? Means say I don't know what is this n cluster, say I'm just putting it as 8 or 10 or 12, and then I'm fixing up the maximum tire as 200, n in it as say 50. So what will happen? And as a result, what will happen? Scattered data points means we will not be able to find out any particular groups. So we are not be able to find out any specific number of clusters. So as a result, even if we are running the actual correct code, the output will be not able to form any cluster, means we are not getting any cluster. So this algorithm will fail. So that's why in the previous day I was explaining clearly, whenever you have some piece of code with you, you have to understand each and every term about this coding, because all those terms they are related with some specific things. See, Python code is difficult similarly. Why? Because this code is not designed by us. The library functions what we are using, they are helping us to designing. So whatever parameter they are providing, it is designed by them. We are just using it. So we have to be very cautious while using this term, right? So understanding these terms are very much useful. You just altered the values. Do not alter all the value at the same time. What you will do, you just alter those values one by one and try to observe the output variations. Then you will be able to understand how this algorithm is working. So this is the first thing. So main focus of this algorithm is here. So this is a controversy now again. Okay, ma'am, you know the number of clusters over here. So similarly, you have decided the number of centroids and number of clusters, because see, this parameter alone is controlling two things: the number of centers and the number of clusters. So what you will do, you just change this one to 5 or 4. Then see what will happen. How many numbers of cluster we will get at that point of time? 4 and 5. Then you start observing what are the data points it is falling under which clusters, because we should have 3 clusters. So here my point is, by executing this code, you have to justify one more thing. What happens if we assign more number of clusters than the expected one? Here expected is 3. But if we assign more number of clusters, what will happen in the output? So this thing you have to keep in mind. So 3 is the actual value. So now you just set up 3 values, 4, 5 and 6, and try to observe the output. What will happen? Do not think that the cluster shape will be altered or something will happen. Just check this once, because you will find one wonderful observation from here. So I'm not explaining it. So it's a self-study part. You have to keep in mind what happens if the number of cluster increases. And also you have to perform one more observation, that is, you just fix up this value to 2 and 1. Then just see what will happen. So increase the number of clusters and centroid and also decrease it, and try to observe the outcome. Why it is important? See, in the previous day I was talking about that we are talking about hard clustering. Means whichever point is assigned to some particular cluster, it means this point must belong to that cluster. There is no chance that this point must belong to any other cluster. So since we are talking about hard clustering, so at this point of time, it is pretty much evident that you should study what happens if the number of cluster increases or decreases. And this assessment in the research paper will be plotted in terms of a graph. Means by plotting the increasing number of observation or decreasing number of observation using this k value, we can justify that whichever value we have taken as n cluster value, it is a correct one or not. This justification is required in the research paper. So you go and observe this one. Say I don't know what is the number of cluster, I cannot fix it. So at that point of time, what we will do? Let's talk about this clustering. In k-means clustering, if I don't know the number of clusters, say for your dataset you don't know. So what you can do? So at this point of time, one thing you can do, you can just put the random value and check what is the output you are getting. If you are getting a pretty good outcome, then you can go with that. But apart from this, we have other two mechanisms. One is known as elbow method. Okay, let me write. To fix up this number of cluster, additionally, we can use two algorithms along with this k-means clustering algorithm. So since we know that at the first step of the k-means algorithm, we have to select the number of k, and depending on this k, the value of centroid will also vary. So instead of selecting k value, we can apply two methods. So one method is known as, this is the spelling, elbow method, and another method is known as Sillotte method. So how we can do this thing? So try to understand this. Elbow method basically responsible for calculating within cluster sum of squared error. It is known as WSS or WCSS, within cluster sum of square error for different values of k. Means it will take different values of k by its own, and it will calculate the within cluster sum squared error. Means if I select the k value as 2, how much error I am getting within cluster. If I am taking the value of k as 3, then within cluster how much value we are getting. So it will randomly pick up some set of values of k, and it will try to calculate the within cluster values, and then it will calculate the error. So whichever error is less, it will give you an output that this will be the good k value that you can use for your algorithm. So this elbow method work in this manner. So now if you can ask me this question, what is this within cluster sum of square error? So it is a very simple thing. It's a simple mathematical thing. So the squared error for each point is the square of the distance of the point from its representation, that is its predicted cluster center. So it's a simple thing. So we have to find out the distance between the point and the cluster centroid that I was talking about, and we have to find out square of error. So WSS or WCSS code is the sum of the square errors of the points. So actually it is picking up many number of k values, and it will try to find out whichever k value is giving what amount of errors, and then whichever error we are getting for different values of k, those values we are squaring up. So this WSS score is the sum of the square errors of all the points. So any distance metric like Euclidean distance or the Manhattan distance can be used. Means if you ask me this question that how this distance is measured between 2 points, so you can take any formula of Euclidean distance or Manhattan distance, whichever distance calculation is available for you. So in one word, if you use elbow method, this elbow method will work on the set of values of k, and it will try to find out the error term for each and every k value, and now it will try to find out the squared error terms. So now you can ask me one question, okay, why squaring up error? Because sometimes we may have negative values also. So squaring up will give us a proper positive identification. So always squaring up is helpful in this case. So WSS score basically not deals with the error value, it deals with the squaring up error values. So whichever error is less, so it will backtrack to that k value and give us as an output. So it's a simple thing. So I can share with this code. Means additionally what you have to do, whatever code we have written, so one thing we have to keep in mind, we have to design one extra function for defining this elbow method. Just like this, how the function is defined in Python, we have to write def and then the name of the function. Say I'm just writing calculating, say WSS or WCSS, anything, and then you have to pass the arguments on which you want to work with. So here, whenever we are deciding the value of k, two arguments are most important. One is the points or the data points, and another one is the maximum values of k, right? Because it will take a range of values. So this is how you can define a function in Python. So this additional function you need to design the elbow method, and within that method you need some steps to design that particular elbow method thing. So, and one thing, whenever you are calling and the fitting part of the clustering, everything will be inside the inside this function. So I will supply this one to you. So the additional thing is, if you wish to use elbow method, just whatever code we have designed, the code will be written inside this function in addition with some piece of code in order to track the elbow method. So this is one alternative that you may have. And another alternative that you can opt for is the Silhouette method. So in case of Silhouette method, what will happen? So if I'm talking about Silhouette value, it means it is basically a measure how similar a point is to its own cluster cohesion and compared to other cluster separation. So this Silhouette value means it will not deal with the value of intercluster only. So elbow method will only considering the internal value of some specific points inside a specific cluster. However, Silhouette method deals with this distance, internal distance from the centroid and the data points. Also, it will check the distance from other points which exist in the other clusters too. So that's why we can say that this Silhouette value measures how similar a point is to its own cluster, which is known as cohesion term, and how this cohesion term is determined in comparison with other cluster separation. So basically, Silhouette value ranges between +1 and -1. So this is the Silhouette value. So there is no question of WCSS or WSS score. This is only applicable for elbow method. But Silhouette method deals with the Silhouette score, and this score value is +1 and -1, not a range. So a high value is desirable and indicates that the point is placed in the correct cluster. So always we are expecting the high Silhouette value. High value means okay, whichever position this point has got, this is the correct cluster. So basically, if you ask me what is the formula, so Silhouette method or the Silhouette calculation, S of I will be performed like this, something like B of I and minus A of I, and it will consider maximum in between A of I and B of I. Now the question is, what is this A of I and B of I? So here Si is defined to be equal to 0 if I is the only point in the cluster. Then it will be considered as equal to 0. That is, we are talking about the centroid. So this is to prevent the number of clusters from increasing significantly with many single other points. So whatever may be the reason, so this is your Silote value. What is this AI? AI is the measure of similarity of the point I to its own cluster. So whichever point we have got as I, inside its own cluster, it will measure something. So it's a measure of the similarity of the points I to its own cluster, and it is measured as an average distance of I from other points in the same cluster. So this is all about AI. And now you can guess what is this BI, because it will also consider the other cluster points also. So BI is the measure of the dissimilarity of I from the points in the other cluster. So try to understand what are these two measurements this Silote method is actually calculating. So whenever I'm talking about a cluster point I, first it will measure what are the similarities, what are the amount of similarities of this point with respect to other points that are considered to be the friends of this cluster. That's why they are in the one cluster. Also, it will measure other points which belongs to other cluster, means what is the reason why this point is separated from this point I, because it has some dissimilarity. So this BI is the measure of the amount of dissimilarity of other points, those belongs to other cluster with respect to I. So all these values are considered together to calculate this Silote value. So this is how your Silote mechanism will work. So again, if you use either elbow method or Silote method, you will find out the proper value of K in this manner. Right? So in one word, one method will help us to find out some sum of error score, and another method will give you some inter and intra-cluster similarity and dissimilarities, by which it will give us the appropriate value of K. So these two methods you can use, right? So if you want to see all these details, definitely I will explain it to you, but this is the answer. So your question was how we can select K. There are three mechanisms. One is random selection, two is considering elbow method, three is considering Silote method. Now I'm going to share you with, there is one secret, that is in my recent research in which I'm writing my next paper, where I am trying to invent a new technique of selecting K or selecting the centroid, and that technique is known as genetic algorithm. So basically I am going to define, or I'm going to merge another algorithm of soft computing which is known as genetic algorithm, and I'm trying to find out the appropriate number of centroids and their distances. I don't know I will be able to succeed or not, so this is my current research. So if I am able to succeed, then I will tell you what I have got. So then it will be established as another technique. So I'm trying my level best to achieve this one. So selecting the value of K is very much important, and you can try your own method also. In Python, whenever you want to get some value, so each time I will be not there to tell you, so just type this function name, right? This one. In the Python you will get in Google, and you will get the support, and you will get the list what are the parameters and how those parameters can be used to extract the inertia value or any other internal value. So it will show you the internal functionality. So you have to try this one. So basically in one word, whenever I'm using a function, whichever argument I am using, they are chosen by me. According to my use, I have selected this. But this function may support other arguments too, which I have discarded for simplicity. So if you go and study this one in details, you will find out how to get that inertia value. So there will be one argument. So you have to just add the argument over here, and if you print this one, you will get the value of the inertia. You can try this one. It's a very good idea.
Okay, ma'am.
But what will happen, Vishal? You have to justify this one, because each time you have to find out one inertia value, and also you have to print the k value also. You cannot fix this k value as 3. So you have to, starting from 2 to 10 or 2 to 15, for each k value you have to track the inertia value. It will be a good research thing. So if you can justify this one, that for this data set, if I don't know what is the number of clusters, so this is how we can justify it. Yes, you can do it. See, it's a very common thing. Okay, we have understood that we have got this kind of cluster. So 3 cluster, say here I'm getting. So who will justify that if I use 3 cluster, I will get the better value? Means accuracy of this k-means clustering. See, we have some accuracy measurement, I will tell you, but we have some accuracy indices in case of clustering. Try to understand. So for hard clustering, we will use some specific indices, and for soft clustering, we will use some specific indices. So for an example, the Davis-Boulding index, there is one index, Davis-Boulding index measurement. Means again, what we can do here at the end of the code, we can embed one function. Inside that function, we will write the code for Davis-Boulding index, and this Davis-Boulding index will give me an idea that whatever number of clusters we have found, whether it is accurate or not. So what will happen if I apply Davis-Boulding index over here? It will be giving me a score near about above than 2.6. So if you round off this value 2.6, you will get near about 3 value. Means whatever number of cluster centroid I have got, it is a perfect thing. But you cannot use this Davis-Boulding index for other clustering purpose also. So here we have to learn which index is used for which clustering. Means for an example, we have a concept of fuzzy C-means clustering, where 0 not 0 1 means a point is not belong to a cluster. Means if a point is belong to a cluster or it does not belong to a cluster. So this is the concept of hard clustering. But in soft clustering, we have fuzziness value. So a point may belong to more than one cluster also. So this kind of clustering is known as fuzzy C-means clustering, and where we have to use another performance measurement, which is known as Xibeny index measurement. So at that point of time, at the end of the code, we will embed the Xibeny index measurement, and then we will get some score. Means those measurement will give us a value. If you round off this value, then you will get to see what will be the expected number of cluster from your data set. So this is how we can perform the further accuracy measurement. So here I have printed what thing. So whatever cluster they have whatever centroid they have selected, I have just printed the coordinate of the centers. Means which data points are finally considered as 3 centroids. I have printed these values in order to see. So you can try and experiment this one, right? These are the centroid values. And you know that centroid values means what? I have to pick up the row from the data set, right? So these are the row values from your data set, which I have picked up. So these are the final centroid values. So after calculation, this kind of value you never get in your data set. So this kind of value is coming from, first centroids are randomly selected, then a formula is used to calculate the latter part of the centroids. After final calculation at the time of convergence, these are the values of the 3 centroids, 3 black dots. So this thing I have printed. So try to understand the difficulty first. So writing k-means clustering algorithm is not a complete thing. We have so many associated things that we have discussed so far. Means after this algorithm, now we have to learn how to find out the accuracy of this algorithm. So now we are going to learn different techniques of finding the accuracy of the algorithm. So just write it down. For K-means clustering, Davis, Boulding, Davis Boulding index is used. So I will discuss it in the later part of the classes. So that is why learning machine learning algorithm is not easy. So whenever you try out for a course, they will only teach you about the algorithm. So writing algorithm is not enough, because this kind of algorithm is available everywhere. And if you write this kind of algorithm, you are not going to write any research paper. So in the research paper, you have to prove your K value, you have to prove your iteration value, everything you have to prove. Whatever you have said, you have to justify it. And this justification part is not so easy. And also I want to tell you one thing. In the maximum research paper, what we will do, we will try out different indices. Means, say for K-means clustering, it does not imply that we have only Davis Boulding indices. Say we have 2 or 3 indices also, by which we can measure its performance. So what I will do, we will try out all those indices. Means after this algorithm, we will write 2 or 3 functions for different indices, and then we will try to compare which indices is closer to my output value. Whichever indices are giving more than 2.6 value, which is nearer to 3, means those indices are basically suitable for my algorithm. Now you can ask me one question, why madam? Because there are several indices you can use. See, the performance of your algorithm is also dependent on your data set. So it is also acceptable that if you use different kinds of indices to measure the performance of your algorithm, what will happen? Then you are giving me a global observation that if you try out all those indices, maximum of the indices are supporting the cluster value as 3. So therefore I am concluding that the cluster value is 3 is good choice for this kind of data set. So this is another hurdle. So you have to implement each and every indices. So this is another research aspect. So you can experiment with this K-means clustering algorithm in multiple ways. Think. So still I am doing research on this K-means clustering algorithm. See, this algorithm is invented say in 1960s or somewhere. I don't know exact date. But still we are performing research on this. So one thing I can say that there is no complete algorithm exist for a certain machine learning problem. Each algorithm is scalable in nature. Means we can add our idea into this algorithm. That's why they are the part of soft computing. You can add up your ideas and you can improve the algorithm performance. If you see this one, you will find multiple codes are already there in this sheet. I will tell you that do practice all these codes, because I'm going to explain this one in the next class onwards. We have many implementation in this sheet. So we have the implementation of K-means clustering using digits also. Digit image classifications is also there in this page. So do practice these things.